Welcome to Runes Löparpodd. This is a pod about running in general, especially about ultradistance running, about adventures, and most of all about remarkable people. Today's guest fit all those descriptions. He is known worldwide from a Netflix documentary, a man I shared a road with in ultra races more than 30 years ago, the organizer of the Berkeley Marathon, inventor of Backyard Ultra, USA crosser, writer, and to summarize it all, an exceptional man. Enjoy stories from a man who is far from average, Gary Cantrell, alias Lazarus Lake.
Big is a 100-pound pit bull that decided I needed a big dog at my house, so he came to bail me out, and it's been a lucky thing for me. He's the best dog I ever had. Apologies to Little, who's a great dog, but Big is like the Einstein of dogs.
The Einstein of dogs. And guess who you are, in my definition? The man you just heard talking is the superstar of ultra running in our time in 2019. Not because he runs faster and longer than anyone else, but because he makes other runners run longer and slower than they've ever done before. Welcome to Runes Löparpodd, Gary Cantrell, alias Lazarus Lake. I have a tradition with my guests. I treat them to blueberry soup. And you are a dedicated drinker of Dr. Pepper, aren't you?
I am indeed trying to personally keep Dr. Pepper in business.
And I'm the reason why I am fascinated by blueberry soup is because that was the first real sports drink here in Sweden. The skiers in Vasaloppet, is 90-kilometer cross-country ski race. They drank blueberry soup. So I treat you to some. Let's see what you like it. It's warm. I took it from my thermos.
How hot is it? I'm not a hot drinker, so my mouth is not.
Was it hot?
Oh yeah.
Would you imagine?
It tastes good, but I'm going to let it cool a little and then drink more.
I have an experience. I have a fun story to tell about blueberry soup. And me. When I ran the Westfield Run in 1988, I had a support crew. Westfield Run was like Sydney to Melbourne, 1,015 kilometers. And I had a support crew. They had a camper, and I had my personal chef on the road, Diane, a lovely woman, but she had never encountered blueberry soup before because she was Australian. Blueberry soup is not a big thing in Australia. And she was, I said, I want blueberry soup. That was before I came to Canberra on the second day. I like to have some blueberry soup. My stomach is upset. Usually really great at stabilizing an upset stomach. Oh yeah, fix it. How should I do it? You boil water and you stir this powder in it, and then you wait a little so it soaks up. Okay. So she did that, and then on the field, on the left side, there was a farmer spreading manure from this huge tank, from a dairy farm something, and it smelled terrible. And she comes out with, "This is the last time I could make blueberry soup. It smells terrible." Oh well, this is not about my stories. This is about your stories, Gary Lazarus Lake. And tell me a little bit more about Big. Why is Big a world famous dog?
He got dumped on the outside the farm, and then someone shot him, and he crawled up in the woods to die. And I live in the woods. I got up that morning and looked out the window, and there was a tree leaned up against another tree, and I could see something was underneath it. And I thought, what the hell is that? So I went outside, and I go out, and it's this enormous pit bull. And it had been shot. It looked pretty bad. But I thought, pit bulls, I was like all runners. I think of pit bulls, if you run in Tennessee, you have to continually fight off loose dogs. And pit bulls were the ultimate fear because that they're so big and powerful and determined that you don't have the confidence you can beat them off if you have to. So I just thought, well, I can't. I was raised by farm people that believe you did not leave an animal to suffer. That was just something you didn't do. And it was fixing to rain, so I brought him up on the porch. I got him to follow me up on the porch, and so I'll sit him there, and then in the morning when animal control is available, I'll get them to come get him and put him down humanely if he lives till morning. And after a while, I just realized this is a really good dog. So I told him, in the morning, if you live till morning, I won't take you to animal control to have you put down. I'll take you to the vet. And I did. It was the best decision I ever did. At the time, I wrote stories about my running and stuff on the ultra list. And so I wrote about finding the dog and all that, and people sent money to help pay his vet bills and set him up a cage. There's a whole series of books about the adventures of Big. He's a doggy Einstein. You cannot contain him. You can't keep him in a pen. You can't keep him in a crate. He can pop any latch man has ever invented. He can remove any collar, even the dog-proof collar. I strapped him into a harness, and he got out of it like Houdini gets out of a straitjacket. The only way I got him to stay was to put him on a chain and ask him not to get off, because he could even open the latch that took me 2 hands to close.
Sounds really like an Einstein dog.
Yeah. Or certainly a Houdini.
But dog, that big dog.
Yes, that was his name.
Yes, and there is another thing that's named Big.
The Big Dogs, Big Dogs Ultra.
Yeah, and what
Backyard Ultra.
Tell me a little about Big Yard's Backyard Ultra.
Well, it's a trail loop that we built there on the farm. It's 4.166667 miles, and we have a race where you run that loop once every hour, or we start a run around it once every hour, and the starting field runs it. An hour later, everybody runs it again, and then again, and you keep doing it until only one person is left. You run it until you can't do it anymore or can't stand to go to the starting line anymore. And we made Big Dog the host because as a pit bull, I thought that it was only just that a pit bull could be the host of an event where humans fought to the death.
That is so typical you.
It seems like justice, but
so now Big is world famous because when you did that, you invented a new way of running races.
We just did it because we had the farm, which is limited. It's a good sized farm. It's got a 4-mile trail on it, but it's still relatively limited space compared to what people do for ultras with national parks and things. And of course, we're just a hillbilly family that lives up in the hills, so we had limited resources, and we wanted to have a good ultra that would be fun with limited space and limited resources. And as it turns out, people really enjoy the backyard ultra style of running for a variety of reasons. Competitively, it's a test of the will to win. It doesn't matter if you're really fast or not really fast. You just have to be willing to keep walking to the line until everyone else gives up. So it's very enjoyable. Of course, a lot of the great athletes are still great because they're great athletes. But some people that you never would expect, that don't have maybe the most natural ability, but mentally they're very strong, they really excel. And then it turned out, as they've discovered over here in Sweden, it's also a very fun event for just everybody. If 2 loops is the furthest you've ever run, it's a non-threatening, easy social environment in which for just regular people to go further than they've ever gone before.
Yeah, it's become incredibly popular.
There's about 100 backyard ultras, and I think something around 40 countries now.
That dog big. That must have been an Einstein to invent something like that.
I was very impressed, but not surprised. Big is an exceptional dog.
Has Big ever run the loop?
Oh, Big knows the loop like the back of his hand. We do the loop all the time, and he knows every step. The only thing is there's a lot of other trails we have out there as well. And when we get out on the far end and start back, every time we come to an intersection, he takes the turn that goes away from the house and goes a little ways down and then looks back at me because he's never ready to go home. We could stay on the trails all day and he would be perfectly happy.
Okay, but tell me about the first big backyard ultra.
Yeah, the first year we did it, it only went, I think, 16, 18, 19 hours, somewhere in there. Because it turns out the trail is too difficult to do at night within the hour. It's as easy as we can make it, but there's certain limitations when you live in rocky hills. We can straighten out everything we can straighten out, but where it goes through the rocks, some of those rocks are attached to the crust of the earth and not that easy to move.
What year was it?
2012.
2012. It's just, as we record this, it's about 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
It's a very, very young sport.
Before we held the first Big's Backyard Ultra, someone had already written me just from seeing it advertised in Ultra Sign Up and said he wanted to put on the same kind of event because it sounded like a great idea. So the first copy of Big's Backyard was only 2 months after the first Big's Backyard.
Copycat of a dog.
Yeah.
No. What kind of people did you get for your first event?
We had a pretty good field. I've been in the sport for a long time, so a lot of my friends are pretty accomplished runners. And then we had a lot of just average people that are just our friends that run. And everyone had a great time, so there was no choice but to do it again. We did make one change. We took the night loop off the trail and got a 4.1667 mile out and back on the road, so that people wouldn't get timed out by not being able to make it. We wanted to make it where that it was possible to go as far as you could mentally have the will to go.
The fascinating thing about backyard is that when you first look at it, 6.7 kilometers or 4.11666, whatever you said, mile. It's so easy in 1 hour. It's like you can, it's a brisk walk. It's like no piece of cake. Is that really a sport? But to do something that's very easy to do so much that you still finally can't do it anymore, that's like this Chinese drop torture.
Yeah. What everyone says is it's easy until it's not.
Yeah.
You can't ever have a bad hour. Unlike other ultras where you can hit a down spell and you can take a long break, you can do whatever desperate thing you want to do to give yourself a chance to recover. You can't do that in the backyard. You have to go on and on and on and on if you have a moment of mental weakness. Because where people go out, they don't go out because they can't do the loop. the hardest part of the course is from your chair back to the starting line, because that's where everyone drops out. They say, I can't keep doing it.
Do you remember the winning result for the first backyard ultra?
The first one where we went to the road was either 28 or 29 hours. And that was the first one where the second place runner was a woman. At the end, it was Joe Fegis won. And at the time, he was the top multi-day runner in the world.
No, he
and a woman named Marcy Beard pushed him to the wall.
Oh.
And she's a good runner, but not anyone you'd ever heard of. And it was just, wow, what an astounding result. Not only that the second place was an unknown woman up against the best male multi-day runner in the world, she almost beat him.
That's a fascinating thing about backyard, because you have to have completely different qualities than in a 100K or in a 24-hour race, or maybe even in a 6-day. You have to have a little of it, but it is not the determining factor.
It really is a measure of the will to win. And it's really a pleasure to see runners who are not the fastest runner in the world, or the women runners as opposed to the men. The person who has the will to win is suddenly the top dog, because a woman won the whole thing outright this year, and we had a world-class field. And she simply, one by one, they gave up until she was the only one left.
I have a prediction for backyard. First of all, that it's going to be even more spread around the world, because it's the most social athletic event I know of. And I think that if we wait long enough, we're going to see winning results over 100 hours.
Whew. That'll kill me.
Yeah, as an organizer.
I have to ring the bell every hour. I owe it to the people who run. So we've gone 68 is the longest so far, and that gets pretty hard.
That's a very good result, but I think as people specialize and they have at least two very, very determined and durable runners who have very good tactics and on a very easy course in perfect weather conditions with great support, then we're going to see more than 100 hours.
I think it's possible. There's no telling what people can do. The races go long when you get more than one person who just won't give up. And they just keep walking to the line hour after hour, because when you get to the competitive level, people don't quit because they can't do the loop. They quit when they no longer believe they can win. And some people have a powerful belief that they can win. This is why everyone quits between their chair and the starting line. They could still make the loop, but why torture yourself once you believe that you are not going to win?
When I think about backyard ultra, and I wonder, where was you when I needed you, backyard ultra? I would have loved to try it. My wife Mary, she would have beaten me in the backyard. When she was injury-free and fully trained, I don't know anyone who would have beaten her. But then I could say I support her instead.
I really regret that they didn't start while I was still able to run, because I feel like it would have played to my strengths as a runner.
But you were quite a runner once upon a time.
Unfortunately, my only strong points were that I could take a lot of abuse and keep running.
Well, that's what ultra is all about, taking a lot of abuse. You have said the greatest definition of ultra running. You wrote it in the Ultra Running magazine. And do you remember what you wrote?
Oh, Lord, I've said so many crazy things.
Should I tell them?
You can tell them.
It said, in middle distance running, it's about oxygen deficiency. In marathoning, it's about glycogen deficiency. In ultra distance running, it's just about deficiency.
Yeah, I remember that.
that is the best definition of ultra distance I've ever heard, because you have you lose functioning muscle nerves, functioning muscle, brain, everything. Fuel for the body.
It's a pretty remarkable sport. Humans can do some amazing things.
Yeah, we can, such as inventing new sports, and
Well, I have to give credit to the dog.
yeah, Einstein.
The Einstein of dogs.
Yeah, I would like to meet that dog one time.
You know, during the entire backyard ultra, he sits under the scorer's table between the mics. We had our scoring team is good Mike and bad Mike, and the scoring monkey back in the back, Bill Schultz, if you remember him. And Big sits between the mics and watches every bit of it. He usually won't even take his first nap for 36 hours.
Amazing.
He loves every minute of it.
He would never
I
bite.
think he knows he's getting revenge.
He will never bite the runner.
No. But he will also not allow another dog on the site.
Okay. No, but you were ultra when ultra wasn't cool, if you know what I mean. Since you are from Tennessee, isn't that country music?
Yeah. See, I mistakenly thought ultra was cool, so I was trying to get in it and run with the cool kids. And then I ran with people like Mary Hanudel and Rooney Larson and Bill Schultz and Park Barner, Nick Marshall. There were a lot of cool kids. Ray Krolowitz. Steve Warshauer. I don't know if we can put Ray in the cool crowd, though.
He's still running.
He can still do a 24-hour 100 last time I knew.
I know.
Not many of us can still do that.
You mentioned Mary Hanudel. Who is she?
She was a tough little girl from Ohio, and saw her at the races. I think that she had got mixed up with some guy named Cy Ma. And
the coach.
Matter of fact, probably before they even knew it, I was at, I believe, a 6-day race, and her and this Rooney Larson character were both in it. And I think everyone there said, you know, those two kind of like each other.
Not in a 6-day. I have never run a 6-day.
It wasn't in a 6-day?
No, it was.
I don't know what race it was.
Oh, we ran together in a 24-hour in Norway, in Hønefoss. That's the first time we actually we ran in Spartathlon in 1985. And then she didn't notice me, but I made her change her name from Mary Hanudel to Mary Larsson. But you and Mary ran in races before I knew any of you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we were in a 6-day together. Of course, she was far to the front of me. I was experimenting in my early multi-days with how many things can you do wrong and not die.
You explored deficiencies.
I created deficiencies that were not even necessary.
Well, you are very creative. You created quite a few races, but you put on races also.
Yes, life is funny. You always get what you need, but you don't always get what you want. When I was young, I would have given anything to be a great football player. Football was the sport that I loved more than anything. But as a sophomore in high school, I was 5 feet tall and weighed 70 pounds. Even in wrestling, I would have been more than 20 pounds lighter than the weight limit for any division. So really, there was no choice in sports for me to take but to run track and cross country. And I really wanted to compete in sports, so that's what I did. I wasn't very good at it, so I kept doing longer and longer distances until I was doing ultras. I thought each time I would move up, because my strength was durability and toughness, I thought I'll move up to marathons and then to ultras. The problem was everybody else that moved up had the same positive attributes and they were still faster than me. So I kind of along the way got into directing races. And if I had been the athlete I wanted to be as a little kid, I would have never run. If I'd been the runner I wanted to be, I would have never directed a race. And my career would have been over decades ago. It would be a long forgotten memory. But instead, you take what you have and you try to use it to the best of your ability. And I've really had, in the other sports as a coach and in this as a race director, I've had more success than I ever dreamed of having as a runner. And now I'm an old guy who can't run and I can still direct races. So
yes, and you do
all my bad luck was good luck.
Yeah, for the rest of us as well, because now you are this, as I told you in the beginning of this pod, you are the superstar of ultra running, because we are now at the race Kullamannen in Sweden, southern Sweden. It is a 174 kilometer grueling cross-country race, and you are here as a guest of honor. How many people have asked to take selfies with you here?
I feel embarrassed because I just think of it that I'm taking the selfies I'm getting my picture made with the runners, probably the winner, because that there was enough of them that I have a good chance of that.
People are going to go home and say, they're not going to say, who won the race? Who won the race? Oh yeah, there was this guy, Peter something or whatever his name will be. He's still is in the lead, because we are actually recording this as the race is going on. The runners have been out now for more than 13 hours.
Yep, 13:28, 13:20.
And Peter Restorp is a firefighter working on the CERN, this nuclear test site, almost a nuclear accelerator in, I think it is in Geneva. And he's Swedish actually, but he works there, and he trains in the mountains around Chamonix, where he lives. I know that I will remember him, but more people will remember, oh, I'm at Lazarus Lake, the guy from Netflix, the Netflix guy.
You know, the key to all that is to remember that as a race director, you're only a conduit. You're providing a venue for other people to achieve greatness, and to remember that you're in the background. But if you ever start thinking that you're a star, then you should have a race with no runners and see how crappy that is.
I know you don't seek to be a star, but you cannot avoid being a star, because you have this big beard and you walk around here, and you're the only one around here who's, except for Mary Hannudel nowadays.
That has
Larsen.
A big beard?
No, not yet. But who talks English? Oh, there's that guy with the Santa Claus beard. Yeah. But isn't that fantastic that the race director, the creator, the one who devotes so much of his time is actually honored like you are honored? Because I have always had the greatest respect for those people who put on races and dedicate so much of themselves, maybe even their own money, just to provide running for the rest of us.
But we get a lot of joy out of it. The races that we do, the Vol State being one of the great examples where the field is ordinary people and they achieve this incredible 500-mile run through daily 40-degree temperatures and high humidity. And when to see their faces when they get to the end and they have found this in themselves more than they ever dreamed was there. And that's not something I did. I just made it possible for them to do it. And then on top of that, I get to see their faces and feel the joy that humans get from accomplishing great things.
But when you put on the race that you are maybe most famous for,
the race of broken hearts.
The race of broken hearts. The race when almost everyone drops out from?
It's kind of a graduate school in self-discovery. Along with discovering that you can do more than you ever dreamed, sometimes you have to discover that there's limits on what you can do.
And that's Barkley.
And that's the Barkley.
And known from this fantastic Netflix documentary. What was the name of the documentary?
Barkley, the race that eats its young.
Oh,
I'm not positive. I think that was the name. I should know. I've seen it 100 times.
I have seen it once, and I'm gonna see
You
it
saw
again.
it the right number of times.
No. I like to see it again, but you know, for an old ultra runner who wish I could also be torn up by the twigs and fall down the hills and be tortured by the cold and the rain and the rattlesnakes and you name it, and drop out with honor. It's hard to watch such a race because I wish I was there.
Sometimes you look back and you wish your body could do the things it used to do.
Yeah.
But
Barkley, how did you come up with that idea?
oh, it was always there.
First of all, tell a little about the Berkeley Marathon. How long is it?
It's a 100-mile race that's on 5 20-mile loops through Frozen Head Park. And it has a pretty extreme amount of climb. There's no course markings. The trails are backcountry trails, which a lot of people are familiar with paths. But trails is a different animal. You have to have an eye for the woods to see where the trail goes. But there are trails even though them city people can't see them. And the time limit is set where if you can do the math in your head, and all the experienced old runners are good at doing the race math in their head, you realize that right from the start the time limit is right on your ass. And it's pushing you the whole time so that you feel this pressure not to make any mistakes. A map of the course is not given out until the night before the race. So your pre-race planning is just generally that you know you're doing 5 rugged 20-mile loops, but the specific race planning you can't even start till the night before. And then we don't tell you the starting time. We blow a conch shell an hour before the start, which could be anywhere from midnight on Friday to noon on Saturday.
And what's the time limit? You talk about the time limit.
It's 12 hours per loop, 60 hours for the whole thing.
So 12 hours to run 32 kilometers. That sounds so easy.
There's about 4,000 meters of climb
Per loop?
and descent per loop, and that complicates factors. And not having course markings complicates it, and following trails and using the map complicates it. And then it gets to be night. Doing the first loop under 12 hours for a good runner with competent wood skills and navigation skills and the ability to carry all their own gear and know what to carry, that's not that hard. The general wisdom is you can run it as fast as 8 hours and not beat your body up so bad you have no hope. Or you can run then around the medians around 9, and you can go as slow as 10 and still finish. But that gives you between 2 and 4 hours of cushion. Then you do it again at night, and at night it's dark, and that's going to slow you down 2 or 3 hours. You might add another hour to your cushion, and you got to do it a third time. And I'm just kind of using a what if that they're divided into day and night loops, because according to the start time it varies. Then you've got to get through the third loop and get some time saved, because the fourth loop at night comes after that, and that's the slowest loop of all. And you're going to lose a bunch of time on the time limit. Most people who have finished hit the fifth loop and they're required, in order to finish, they have to run the fifth loop faster than they did the fourth. So it's like a mandatory kick.
And when did you first stage that race?
1985, me and Rod Dog backpacked the loop to prove it could be done, and I always like to think we did the first Barkley loop, although we didn't make the time limit because it was really rugged then. No one had been on those trails in about 40 years. Then in 86 we had the first race and no one finished.
And the amazing thing is, why did people come from the second race when no one finished?
Because no one finished, but it seemed like it was possible. Of course, we were just doing 3 loops then. I knew better than to throw 5 loops out there when 3 wasn't even possible. It took 3 years for the first person to get 3 loops, and then we told them, well, you know, what we're really wanting to do here is a 100-miler. And they kept coming back, but no one really believed it was possible. They would do 3 loops plus a little extra, and then the next one would do 3 loops plus a little bit more than that. Because, you know how runners are. They wanted to go the furthest anyone had been, but they didn't think 100 miles was possible. And then this guy came from England, and he didn't know any better, and he ran all 5 loops and finished the race with about 28 minutes to spare.
Mark Williams.
Mark Williams.
Mary and I have been running with him in Spartathlon.
The first thing that anyone said to him after it was over was David Horton, and David said, "Congratulations, now you've ruined it for everybody." He said, "Now we can't run and not finish and go home and say, yeah, but it's impossible. And now we know it can be done. We have to do it." It took 5 more years before the second person finished.
But how many people want to run the race and how many people are actually allowed to run the race?
Well, we can only take 40 because it's in a natural area, and these trails, to keep them like they are, you can't put too much traffic over them. Trail runners are great for regular trails, your footpaths, because they beat them down and they stomp out the weeds and they really make the trails good. But we don't want the trails to change from their natural state, as where they serve as animal trails primarily. So we limit it to, we have 20 elite athletes and 20 regular people that we more or less do a lottery to put in. We could, if they were all elite athletes, because of the number of loops they would run, we would have to cut it down to 25 or 30 entries.
Because
the
there's so many.
campground would hold 40, and I think it's important to give as many people as possible the opportunity to have that experience in the wilderness, and through the things like the media and the movie, that people that sit at home and never dream of doing something like that, they see the value of wilderness, and that maybe when someone's wanting to strip mine a place that's unspoiled, or they're wanting to clear cut it, that these people will think, no, wilderness is good. There's good things that happen in the wilderness. And
I agree with that, because in Sweden we have this we call allemansrätt, where everyone's right to be out in the forest or in the fields, but you are not allowed to disturb anyone and to destroy anything. The landowner should not lose a penny of you using his or her land. So I wish that was so in America also. But because of that, people will never allow for nature to be destroyed in Sweden.
it's good because the Frozen Head area, when I was young, I backpacked and camped all over Tennessee. There were so many places you could go, and Frozen Head was one of them, and it wasn't even a park then. And while I was hiking there is when I first spotted on the map the trails that make the Barkley. But we didn't go until it was me and Rod Dog, because the normal people that went with us backpacking and camping were not anxious to do trails like that. And when they made Frozen Head a park, I thought, this is a bad thing, because now there's going to be restrictions on what I can do, and we've always been able to do what we want. Of course, we were knowledgeable and we cared, and we wouldn't have torn anything up anyway. But it wasn't a tragedy, because all the other places I went that didn't become parks, they're gone. So this is the one place that's left. It's necessary that it be a park. Unfortunately, there's so many people who want to go in the wilderness that there's no way for them all to do it, or the wilderness would be destroyed by love. So at the Barkley, we try to make a fair distribution and get as many people as we can a chance to really have that experience.
What does it cost to participate?
Well, that's kind of a shameful thing. We're scamming the runners. It's $1.60, and we tell them it's a penny a mile, because if you do 3 loops, it's 60 miles, and we call it a fun run. And if you do 5 loops, it's the whole 100-miler. It's the actual race. So when we charge them a penny a mile, we're really double charging them for the first 60. But no one has totally complained and called us on it yet. But I feel like one day I'll open up the newspaper, and there it'll be, scam at Frozen Head.
That would be the most inverted scam I've ever heard of. Because that's actually the most fun per dollar that you can possibly have. More mile per dollar.
It's probably relatively low fee.
It's so popular. Why don't you take $1,000? You would get 40 people easily to pay $1,000 to run that race.
Yeah, I know that, but then I couldn't do what I want to do, and it wouldn't be fun anymore, and we wouldn't get the right people. The people we get out there love to run, and we have people like John Faggy, who finished, who's like the poster child for the regular everyday ultra runner, can do the Barkley. He was right in grad school. The $1.60 fee was about what he could afford. And when you put them all in shorts and drag them through the briars and roll them in the mud, it can be a guy with a 7-figure salary, or a grad student who sells pop bottles for the refund. You can't tell them apart.
No.
Especially when you take away the ability to buy all the best electronics, because we strip people of all their electronics, all their communication. I know the thing now is to put trackers on runners so that even if they don't know, you know where they are, but even that is a comfort. It's like the observed electron, it changes what it does because it's observed. The runners know when they leave camp that they are completely free, that their challenge is no different than any human that's ever been in the wilderness. They have the same challenge to cover the terrain and find their way and stay alive.
You have funny names on your events. You have Biggs Backyard Ultra, named after your pit bull, and you have Barkley,
after Barry Barkley, who is a good friend for many, many years, and a lot of people would say his personality is about as rough as the Barkley.
Oi.
It's probably why we get along. We are neither one really polished to a fine glossy finish.
Okay, maybe that's it. You put on races that reflect you. But Strolling Jim is a race that you put on.
That one is that's a fun one from the old days when I was young and could run. It's got a really varied course. It's 41 miles. It's a nice runnable distance. You have a variety of surfaces and terrains to cover. And it's a thinking man's race to race it, because you have to plan how you're going to run each section. You know that, like you, Rooney, if you were running against David Horton, and that you know his strengths and weaknesses and your strengths and weaknesses, and you think, I'm going to maneuver this race to where it's decided on my terrain. Of course, he's not no fool. He's going to be trying to maneuver that race so it's decided on his favorite terrain. And it's really fun to watch the old-time racers get out there and race that course.
Sounds lovely, but why Strolling Jim?
It was the first ultra I put on, and Strolling Jim was a walking horse, the first walking horse champion, and the walking horses were at that time that I started a big industry in the area. So I wanted it to have a tie that the local people could kind of hang to. A lot of years have gone by. This is the 42nd year, and I think now more people know the Strolling Jim as a foot race than a horse.
So you named the race after a horse?
Yes, I prostituted myself. I picked a name that I thought the local people would embrace.
And I hope they did.
They did.
But you were a pioneer of ultra-distance running in the modern era.
When I first ran ultras, I was part of the first ultra boom, and the big controversial topic everyone was concerned about when I started was, what happens if it grows so big that we don't all know each other? I mean, it will destroy the fabric of our sport, because at that time, if I didn't know Mary and had run with her, I certainly knew who she was, and I knew people that had run with her. Right? I mean, from coast to coast. It was where they talk about the 6 points of connection for everybody in the world. For every ultra run in America, it was 2. Anybody you didn't know, you knew somebody that knew them.
Yeah. It was worse in Sweden. In 19
you could all meet and sit around one table and eat.
Yeah. In 1987, there was one race longer than the marathon, and there were 19 Swedes who, any time during the year of 1987, finished an ultra race, and basically we knew each other. So, but now it's grown so big that. But I like it. That's what I was striving for.
Everything changes. A lot more people are getting a lot more out of it. And you kind of miss those days.
You mentioned coast to coast, that you knew each other coast to coast. You have actually walked United States coast to coast was it last year, 2018?
Summer of 2018, yeah. It needed to be done.
Why? Well, I shouldn't ask that question.
I mean, surely you understand that. I think that's the question I don't even understand. It's like, you see it on a map. How could you not want to run across it? And if your body's too broken down to run, well, then you have to walk.
But you were a senior citizen when you walked across America.
Yeah. I went to my doctor to get medical approval to do it, and he said he didn't need to give me approval or disapproval because physically, with my physical situation, I could not do it. And I knew that he was right. But what I realized I could do one day. So I just did one day. And then I did it 124 more times. You
walked across in 124 days?
Yeah. It would have been nice to do it when I was young and could run. It would have been a lot easier and it would have gone a lot faster.
And you were older than 70?
No, I was 43.
Oh, yeah, you're 43.
Now, there's older people than me have done it. My hat is off to them. I don't see how. I was really proud of the effort. I went solid and I never wavered. There was never a downtime, never a discouragement, never a thought that I would quit or that I even wanted to quit. And I really attribute it to all those years of being around people like Rune Larson and Mary Hannudel and Park Barner and and Nick Marshall and all these people that I was in the presence of so many great athletes, and by just seeing the physical and mental toughness that they had, I guess it rubbed off on me, or I just felt like I would be letting everyone down. And it was a surprise. There was just not anything that happened when I injured my hip. All I could think was, okay, what do I need to do to go on? And then you work through it.
Yep.
And all the credit goes to people I've been lucky enough to be around over the years.
Well,
who wants to be the weak link?
I can tell you then, there are lots of us who owe a lot to you for your innovations and your creativity and work with inventing new applications to ultra distance running. Because when I started, it was 100k, or it was a 24 hours, and if you were lucky and you had a lot of money, which I didn't have, you could go to America and run Old Dominion or Western States or Strolling Gym. But now there's so many different ways we can socialize when we are running ultras.
It's a different sport, and people, of course, not every idea I've come up with is great, because I've had lots of races that lasted for a little while and then petered out. Mm. But I don't get discouraged by failure, because you can't succeed unless you fail.
No. And you talk about things change. I knew you under your name, Gary Cantrell.
Yeah. My real name.
Yeah.
That was the only one I ever intentionally had. The other one just got picked up by accident.
Lazarus Lake. That's what people know you as.
That saves my mother a lot of embarrassment.
Why?
God bless her. She's too old to go through all that.
Well, why Lazarus Lake?
Because of in the beginning of email, when you the first email was business email, and your name or your name and your job title, that was your email address, and you used it. And then you got to the point where lots of people had email, and I realized I'm sending out lots of personal business on my work email, so I need to get my own email. And I just put that name down, because when I looked at it, I thought, I don't want to send out emails that go out into to wherever the hell they go. How do I know that there's not 1 million people that can pick them off and read my business? And I don't like people seeing my business. But I would put another name on there, and then people that I meant to send it to would know who it was from. And if someone intercepted it, they wouldn't have a clue. And Lazarus Lake was just the name I picked because it was a cool name.
It was actually a good artist name.
Well, I went along for years, and the email grew, and you start doing all your personal business on the email instead of all those letters we used to write. And the ultra list came, so you're commenting on stuff in ultras and communicating with this wide community of people. And one day I went to a race, and people were calling me Laz. And I thought, they don't even know what my real name is. Maybe I should tell them. Nah, maybe not.
Well, Gary Cantrell, Lazarus Lake, and the greatest, actually superstar of ultra running in 2019, and may you invent something more. And first and last, I would like to say we come a long way from when we ran a 48-hour race together in Columbia, South Carolina in 1986. It was the first time I got to know you personally, and I was very impressed that you knew so much about Sweden's history, and you knew about Erik Blodyx.
So I'm interested in all useless information.
Erik Blodviks is not useless information.
Well, see, as it turns out, you never know when information that most people would consider useless turns out to be useful. Because I remember telling you that, and you're like, "You've heard of him?"
No.
Well, of course, hasn't everybody?
And maybe 700 years from now, someone have heard about Lazarus Lake and spreading the word about him. Oh yeah, he was the guy who invented this kind of backyard ultra. You know, the world record is 121 laps now. Oh well, Gary, Lazarus, thank you very much. Very, very fun to have you here in Sweden. And the crowd is waiting for you. They are going to surround you and take selfies with you and treat you like celebrity. And I'm not gonna keep the crowd from you. So thank you for being part of Runes Löparpodd, the first version of it in English. So thank you, and see you after next invention.
I really appreciate having this time to talk to you, because it's been too long. We've had a lot of chances to talk today, and it's been great after all this time. You and Mary both. It's fun to look back and remember how it used to be when men were men, and women were women, and ultra runners were just inherently tougher than they are today, don't you think?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Lars.